All right. So before we get started today, I do want to take a moment to tease my next episode that's going to be on Thursday at 5:10 Eastern because as you guys can see, today we're talking about the quarterbacks again, but on Thursday I want to take some time to talk about all of the non-quarterbacks in this year's draft class. I'm going to rank the top 10. But with that said, we've got some work to do today with the quarterbacks, and today we're talking about pro readiness. Which players are ready to come in and contribute to winning, which players are ready to come in and play at the highest level right away. So, with that said, let's dive into it. Number one, I've got Jaden Daniels here, and there's a few different reasons for that. Production aside, we can talk about the numbers because they were fantastic. What about just the eye test in general? First of all, being able to make all different types of throws to all different areas of the field. We knew that he was super efficient throwing the deep ball this year, but what about the drag routes underneath, the balls to the sideline to Malik Neighbors, or even some of those throws over the middle where I thought he needed to put extra velocity on the ball against man-to-man coverage? He did that. So that's one aspect. How about the pocket awareness and pocket presence that he had? Having calm feet in the pocket, being willing to step up in the pocket. And you often saw him escape out of the pocket up the middle, which can be even more dangerous than escaping out of the side of the pocket at times. And then also just having his head on a swivel and getting through his progressions quickly. That leads me to the system he played in at LSU during his time at LSU. As I've said before, it was a mostly pretty much all shotgun offense, but he's making full field reads in this offense, oftentimes using those weapons of Malik Neighbors on one side, Brian Thomas on the other, getting vertical down the field and really scanning the whole field. I think that makes him more ready to go than any other quarterback in this class. Again, also the ability to neutralize a pass rush as well. I think he's such a dual threat that really comes into play here. Defenders really having to maintain rush lane integrity against him. I think that will help his offensive line, as we talked about in the last mock draft. And then again, was the most consistent against man coverage. And we know we're going to see that on third down in the NFL at the next level, specifically third and short, third and medium, sometimes even third and long. He had the best ball placement against man coverage. So I do think Jaden is the most pro-ready at this point. Now we get to the second quarterback I would take in terms of being the most pro-ready. And this could be controversial, but I'm going to go with Michael Penix here. And there's, again, a few reasons for this. We have to go back to the system that he played in, right? I mean, similar to LSU, maybe even more pro style than LSU, is Washington actually employed some under center sets and some heavy sets with multiple tight ends at times, although they had a great trio of receivers. But again, less RPO and more full field read progressions, things of that nature. I mean, plenty of times it was just a straight drop back game with Michael Penix at Washington. So I think there's an easier transition there than the guy that I'm obviously going to put at 3. And we don't have to hide that. I'm going to have Caleb at 3. But it also comes down to the habits that each of those guys have. Michael Penix is used to operating within the pocket, whereas Caleb, it relies on his improvisational skills at times. So that's a big part of it. But when I also look at the deep ball passing, specifically in their matchup against each other, Michael Penix and Caleb Williams, when Washington and USC played, I actually thought Michael was a little more precise with his deep ball passing. Obviously, Caleb is capable in that department. But, yeah, that's what I see at this moment. I see a quarterback that operates within the pocket a little bit better, was more accurate with his deep ball, and is going to have an easier transition because of the offense he played in at the college level. So then obviously we get to number 3 with Caleb. Again, I'm going to go back to the habits here because at times, as many have alluded to, he put the Superman cape on and he evaded rushers, escaped out of the pocket, relied on his second reaction playmaking. And I could see negative plays as a result of that at the next level. I think Caleb is capable of playing from the pocket, just needs to develop better habits at the next level. That's really what it comes down to. You talk about the system as well. Lincoln Riley is a little more RPO oriented as compared to Washington and LSU. But again, something that is going to be able to be transferable, for Caleb is going to be his ability to make throws to all parts of the field. Again, I'll point out one more time, I did think Jaden and Michael were slightly more accurate with the deep ball, but that doesn't mean Caleb can't get better in that area. And I'll also say this, I don't think Caleb always relied on that second reaction playmaking. He's not a reckless player. But again, it's just a habit that he's going to need to get better at in terms of playing from the pocket on a more consistent basis. Then we go to number 4. I had to take Drake May here just because you saw transferable plays at the college level and you just point at and go, okay, that can work at the next level. But again, I go back to the habits, and it's funny when we think about the third and fourth quarterbacks taken here, to me, in terms of pro readiness, they're arguably the most gifted in the class. So they're able to develop some of those, not even bad habits, but just not habits that are as good or as great as the other two that I put in front of them because they're so gifted. So just something to think about there. I would take Drake 4th. I do want to get to a comment here, John Michael. I was also thinking Penix as a high readiness guy. Fair amount of experience and very good as a pocket passer. One of the reasons I think he's lower on draft boards is because of his injury history. I didn't even take into account the experience. That's a good point as well, as I believe he played 6 years, 4 at Indiana and 2 at Washington. So that's a good point. And the fact that his ceiling isn't as high as someone like Williams or Daniels, that's true too. He has probably already gotten close to his ceiling, which is still a relatively high one. As you guys can tell, I am pretty high on Michael Penix at this point. But yes, back to the 5 quarterbacks that I think are most pro-ready. We had Jaden at 1, Michael Penix at 2, Caleb at 3, Drake May at 4, and then I'm going to go with Bo Nix at 5, something we just touched on with experience. I mean, Bo Nix has more experience than any of these quarterbacks. Now, at Oregon, that was another RPO heavy system. So there's a little bit of there's some wiggle room there in terms of being able to transfer to the next level and, get accustomed to a new system. And then the other thing for Bo Nix that I think is underrated is really the level of competition that he played against in college. When you think about it, he started in the SEC, and then when he played in the Pac-12, the Pac-12 arguably had its best run in, I don't know, decades. There was really a general consensus this year that the Pac-12 was a relatively strong conference, especially compared to what the Pac-12 had been in years past. So, that's where I see it with Bo Nix sitting there at 5, a slight edge over J.J. McCarthy with playing experience in that regard. So, yeah, that's what I would say. Again, I like the different context that we've created for these quarterbacks, solely based on upside and potential, and then pro readiness. You see the contrast there. Now, again, to sum it up, with the first pick in a draft, I do think it's important to take a player with the higher upside, as you can see returns in the long run, more so than quick returns, as I do think. Let's put it this way. If Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix, and Caleb Williams were all dropped into very similar situations in their first year in the NFL, I think Jaden and Michael would excel more in that first year alone. So that's going to do it for pro readiness. And I'm really excited about the next episode where we can get away from the quarterbacks a little bit, talk about the other guys, the wide receivers in this class, the tackles in this class, some of the defensive players in this class. So very excited to get into that. I think at this moment it's going to be on Thursday at 5:10 Eastern. So again, thank you guys for watching and stay tuned.